We all come with certain talents and experiences and vigor, and we have big titles, some don't. It's important not to get caught up too much in those things. Go on your journey with a little bit of humility.
You started your career as a customer service, and
Yes.
now you're heading the company. So how was that journey?
I would say that first job as a customer service prepared me for this job as the president and CEO of Madison. And the reason it did is, I have an appreciation for the full spectrum of what our customers, our employees, our management team, how we see the business and what it does for them and what value it brings to them.
When you want to grow, be ready to take some challenges and show yourself you can learn fast, you can execute fast, and you can come with some ideas to overcome those challenges.
When someone is eager, someone is learning fast, applying it, having an impact, you give them more.
Definitely.
You challenge them. And so, yes, I was challenged constantly, and it just kept rolling.
This is the Oil and Gas Breaking By show, where we are going to invite industry leaders to talk about their journeys and also technologies of tomorrow, in an effort to break some of the biases that might have formed around this energy industry. Hello everyone, I hope you're happy and healthy. I'm Ananja, and you're listening to the Oil and Gas Breaking By show. This show is about the leaders who have made it big in this energy industry while breaking some of the biases around them. And today I'm very happy because I will be joined by Gary Reid, who is the president and CEO of Madison Industrial Group, a conglomerate of 8 businesses with over 500 employees. He has more than 3 decades of experience serving industries like oil and gas and many process industries. Gary has held many executive positions at Eaton, ABB, and Siemens. He's really passionate about development and scholarship for student athletes. And Gary is also serving as an advisor and board member for many nonprofits. And today he lives in beautiful Calgary, Canada. Welcome, Gary. Thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Anand. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Thanks for taking your time. I know you're busy with your new role and new company. So thanks for taking your time and kick off this new year, 3 decades of journey. So I'm looking forward to talk about more about your professional and personal journey and any of the biases that you might have came across so we can all learn from it.
No, I appreciate it. As far as time is concerned, I mean, it's not a matter of whether you have it, it's a matter of how you use it. So I thought it was a good use of it to share some of my, as you said, my journey. I don't think I've had too many people have been as curious to find out about it. So even I am curious as to what the curiosity is. So I'm more than happy to be here and to share whatever information might be useful.
I'm definitely curious, and we connected before when you were working with ABB. So
Absolutely.
our journey goes long back.
Absolutely.
And whatever time you have spent, I think I could see I was able to learn from you. And definitely I thought this is a platform where you can share your journey so we can all learn from it.
Yes. No, you're right. We go back. I remember our first meeting back in the ABB office several years ago. And
in Calgary.
Things come full circle sometimes, right? We say it's a big world, but sometimes it's really small because you never know what things will come right back. So this is good.
Definitely. So without any further delay, I will say if you can talk about any personal or professional journey that you have acquired in this last 3 decades and any of the biases that you might have came across during this journey.
Oh man, that's a really open-ended, I remember talking to individuals early in my career when they used to tell me the years of experience they had was 30 years. And I always thought, whoa. And fast forward to now, I am saying that to some days I wonder, should I put that down? Should I tell people it's over 30 years or not? But yes, it's been a journey. It's been a long, interesting, rewarding, fruitful, challenging journey. One where I can honestly say I have absolutely, positively no regrets with regards to any part of it, even the challenges, and there were a few, because they all contributed something to whatever success or achievements that I've had or enjoyed and privileged to have accomplished over the last number of years. I don't want to go too far back, but as you mentioned in the opening, out of school, I got a stint working for the Eaton Corporation, and actually at the time it was Cutler Hammer. I remember when I started, I didn't know what the products were. I was asked, what's a push button, a pilot light, and what a motor starter is, and I had no idea. But what I had, and fast forward to a few years after, I asked the manager at the time, I didn't know all this stuff, but you hired me anyway. And I think the one thing that I demonstrated, I think, during the interview was an appetite to learn and to contribute. And I can honestly say, it's 30 plus years, I'm the same guy. I still have an appetite to learn, and I still have an appetite, an insatiable appetite to contribute. So whatever that formula was when I started, and as I said, it wasn't by design, it was just something I demonstrated. It has stayed with me, and I've applied it as the years went on, as different positions, different roles, different companies. And so, yes, it's one of my main ingredients, not the only ones, but it's certainly one of the main ingredients that I've applied over the years.
You had self-doubt when you took that role?
Absolutely not. Which is, and it's not in an arrogant way. It's just one of those things where, as I said, I know my appetite and my desire to learn, and I was confident in my abilities to apply what I know. You could argue whether it was overconfidence or not, but it was just a comfortable sense of confidence. That's the best way to describe it. And once I hit that mark, once that was in me and I felt it, the word doubt just never entered my mind. And to this day, it's the same thing. Once I decide I want to do something, and my mind changes to learn how to do it at the best way possible, and then utilize what I've learned, doubt is not even a thing.
But you made a really good point. So first, you didn't have a doubt about yourself, but at the same time, it was complemented by your hunger to learn more.
Absolutely.
So even the roles might be new, but you had a hunger to learn and executed whatever you have learned. So
Absolutely.
I think that might have helped you a lot.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, for everyone, it's different. I mean, I wouldn't suggest this is a formula or a trait that everybody should have or must have. It worked for me, and it probably did because of understanding what the needs were of the organization the organizations or the roles that I was in. It became that first job I had. It was a customer service job. Basically, it was on the order desk taking orders, and distributors would call in. I would answer the phone. They would ask about products, and and I would quickly put them on hold and search through a manual and look at what the product was, and go back and ask some more questions, and I'd go back again. And there was no Google, and there was nothing back in that time. I know I date myself a little bit here, but this was a big manual, and I'm talking it was maybe 6 inches thick, and you would flip through it and have to learn. So I was learning on the fly. The more situations like that I got myself into, the more the adrenaline flow, and the more eager I was to apply it. And I can't tell you why that is. It just is. And so, as I said, it just kept going. And when I left Eaton and I went to Siemens, in fact, they came knocking, and I went to Siemens. The similar situation, as you just indicated, I went in roles where I probably didn't know as much about some of the things I was getting involved with, but that switch again in my head, it flipped, and I just started doing the same thing and started learning on ways. And not only that, what I have learned up to that point, the toolbox is growing, right? You're applying what you've learned. It's not like
every step you're learning something new.
Every step you're learning, and you're putting it all together, and you now take from each situation and apply it accordingly. And I think my managers and mentors, I did have some mentors started showing up for me. The word mentoring became a thing for me during my Siemens life. But I think they saw that. And what do you do when someone is eager, someone is learning fast, applying it, having an impact? You give them more.
Definitely.
You challenge them. And so, yes, I was challenged constantly, and it just kept rolling.
And I think it's a really good balance. I have seen in my career as well, like when you want to grow, be ready to take some challenges and show yourself like you can learn fast, you can execute fast, and you can come with some ideas to overcome those challenges. And what I'm hearing, like you had a similar experience, Gary.
For sure. It's I don't want to overemphasize the learning piece, but it's a critical piece of it, right? We can't believe that we know everything. I mean, I've been in the industry now well over 30 odd years, and it's not beyond me to walk into a room of either my direct reports or, a few layers into the organization, and I don't know some of the things that they might be presenting, and I'm willing to learn it. So there's no inhibition or anything to prevent me from wanting to learn. The other aspect of it, though, is understanding what your contribution is doing, the impact it's having. Because it's not just about you. Again, you're in an ecosystem. It's usually about something else or other people as well. And if you can find a way to marry the two things, then it starts to make sense to you as to what you're doing, how you're doing it, and the impact it's having. If it becomes too one-dimensional, where it's only about me, and then after a while, it's no longer impactful. You're no longer learning because you've convinced yourself that you know enough or a lot. And sometimes it's not a conscious thing, it's just subconscious too.
It happens, yes.
It happens. And then, it's a trickle-down effect from there, right? It's the dominoes start falling and so on and so on. But I think I can speak for myself. In my instance, I think I had good mentors, people that were able to help me bridge that gap between what I was doing and how I was developing myself or trying to, and how I would use whatever I learned to have an impact and add value. And that formula is it's not one that I've thrown away. I've kept it.
Thanks for sharing that. Few things. You said you started your career as a customer service, and
Yes.
now you're heading the company. So how was that journey? Like any of the key milestones that you like to share with us?
So that's a very good question. You know what? I would say that first job as a customer service prepared me for this job as the president and CEO of Madison. It did. Now, there's no way I could have told you way back then that that's the end goal, or that would have been the end result. But it did certainly prepare me, and also a number of jobs in between. And the reason it did is, I have an appreciation for the full spectrum of what our customers, our employees, our management team, how we see the business and what it does for them and what value it brings to them. We have to be good employers. I kind of understand what that means, being on the other side, if you will, as a customer service person and other roles coming up through the organization. If our customers looking into our organization, it's people doing business with people. And as I said, being that customer service person, and you get a phone call from a distributor or from a end customer asking about a product availability because they need it on site within 24 hours because, I don't know, a machine might be down or something is down, and you learn to appreciate the sensitivity of that.
Yeah.
You learn
that's where intimacy.
That's where you learn those things. It's not just a bullet on a PowerPoint. And oftentimes I see that, and I see that presented by senior managers. And it sounds good. They know the meaning of it, but living it is a completely different thing. It's not too often, or not too easy to translate from it being on a PowerPoint to actually living it. I've lived it. So I go back to saying, it prepared me for this because, as I meet clients, which I do, and you talk about how customer-centric our organization is, already I'm thinking, and I know what that means to the person who has to pick up that phone and respond to a client's request. So, it's a bit of a spectrum, but you're not that far removed from understanding the intricacies of how that works all the way from one extreme to the next.
Definitely. So every experience, what I'm understanding, every experience counts in that journey. And especially the roles that are directly connected with the customer, that brings new aspect to this whole equation, correct? So because
Absolutely.
Yeah, because there are many roles in the organization, they don't have a touch point with the customer. So they cannot connect the pain of that customer. But as you said, like when you started as a customer service, they are in panic. They're looking for some parts or some components. And then you could understand the value of even one small push button.
Absolutely.
At that time.
That's that. Your point is correct. I mean, it sounds like it's a $100 item.
Yes.
Maybe it was less back then, but it's it's a significant thing.
Yes.
In the eyes of the client, because they got to get a machine back up and running. They're not in the business to buy our products. They're in the business to do whatever they're doing. It just so happens they need our stuff to do it. So I think our organization and, the ones that I've been part of, that's something that I've always kept, whether I was an individual contributor, like a customer service individual, or I became a manager of a department or a business unit and so on, and eventually into executive management. You can't forget those things, because those are the building blocks
Yes.
to making individuals successful in a corporate environment, but also making our customers see the value in working with us. And that whole, I know you to use your word, the journey includes those things. I mean, a journey is a starting point and a destination, right?
Yeah.
When you look at your GPS, what do you put in? You put in your starting point and you put your end destination. Well, that's just the start. Then the next thing you look at is, okay, what are the directions? How many turns? Where are the stoplights? When do I go east or west? When am I hitting the highway? You have to look at the short steps in between that, because that's where we truly have an impact and are able to calibrate as you go. So for me, all of these things were means of calibrating as we go. I use my customer service information or learnings to calibrate many years in life when I was a business unit manager running the construction business unit, for example, for Siemens, because those things helped to make sure that we're performing at a certain level individually and certainly as an organization.
A really good point. In one of the podcasts, we talk about skills are transferable. And so what I'm learning, whatever you do in journey, those milestones helps you to grow as an individual. And those skills are transferable, either you as a customer service executive or you are leading a company. And that's what we just talked about. There's another point I like to highlight, like you also serve different industries.
Yes.
in your roles.
Yes.
How it was, I would say, easy or difficult to serve different industry, doing different roles. So we just talk about roles, but let's talk about the industries.
Yes, that's a very good question. So I got my exposure to the industry, if you will, through Eaton and then further into Siemens. Now you go into Siemens, we all know the Siemens of old, and they're a little bit different today, but let's say back then, Siemens had healthcare, cell phones,
Yes,
IT services, industrial products, construction business. I'm probably leaving out a couple of them. I think if I recall, there were like 8 or 9 different divisions.
many businesses
Touching a variety of industries. That was a good learning. I can tell you, Anand, there were times when there was one particular instance. I was the kind of let's say a mini CEO of Siemens in a particular region, where, if I remember correctly, all 8 divisions were under my responsibility in a kind of a smaller, well, it's a smaller, but it was Ontario, which meant not only the areas that I was more familiar with, which are the industrial products, industrial services, and so on, where I grew up, but now I'm exposed to healthcare, I'm exposed to IT services, transportation.
Totally new industries and domains.
New industries from the aspect of doing business with them, not using it. I'm a user. I take I do the public transit or whatever, but it's different when you now have to conduct business. And I remember thinking, how do I do business with a hospital? And when the CEO of a hospital is a doctor, quite frankly, but he or she has, wear dual hats. But guess what? At the end of the day, it's again people doing business with people, and the CEO of a hospital has somewhat similar things to worry about or to contend with as someone running a utility. They have to control their costs. They have to, productivity is a thing. Efficiency, technology is a thing. How do they apply technology? Staffing, do they have the right resources to satisfy their customers, patients, and so on? Do they have enough capital to spend? How effectively are they spending their capital? So these are just common business issues that I realized, I didn't know at first, but I realized healthcare industry have to contend with. Transportation, same thing. I remember one particular meeting, we're sitting in a room and there were 3 mayors plus a board member from Siemens and our local management team. And I'm looking around the table and I'm thinking, this is not the type of meeting I would normally have to sell products. But it was necessary because of the type of offering that we were presenting at the time, which is to talk about, a transportation, a rail line and so on between one jurisdiction to the other, and, where Siemens could play a role in that. The sophistication and complexity of the discussions probably elevated, but some of the specific items that we discussed were the same from one industry to the next. Obviously, I think there's some nuances to certain industries. If you take energy, for example, it has its challenges and its opportunities versus transportation and versus forestry or so on. And those differences, I think, will always remain. But I think there are some fundamental things that are also common across multiple industries. And as such, I learned a lot. And but I was able to transfer and apply some of those same principles regardless of what industry. I could sit with a CEO of a hospital today. Tomorrow I would sit with the leadership team of a utility, and the next day with an industrial customer, and comfortably have conversations on their business needs and how we could support them.
Okay, that's very interesting. Serving industrial domain and then serving totally different kind of domains is always challenging, but it's good to know. People buy from people, and also underlying requirements are always same. So as you said, like they're looking for cost saving, highly efficient solution, and they're looking for partners who can deliver whatever they have promised.
Absolutely.
So those underlying things are always common.
Yes.
Coming back to one of the industry, which is close to my heart, is, oil and gas, energy industry. And you are sitting in Calgary. So I have to ask that question. What changes do you see in this industry today?
What change do I see or what change do we need? That's a long discussion.
Okay, let's talk about both.
Well, I will say this. I'll profess that I'm not an expert in any of the industries that I've been exposed to. I've participated, I've been close to them, but the dynamics of them, Alberta and our oil and gas market in particular, is challenging, and it has tremendous opportunity at the same time. Clearly from a challenge perspective, I think, when I moved here, I'm an Ontario, Toronto boy, so let me declare that up front. I moved here about 14 years plus ago, and, I thought it was going to be a couple of years. I would come in and do my thing, and in 2-3 years I would leave, and who knew? 14, 15 years later, I'm still here. But one of the things I recognized, and I think this is not a revelation when I came here, is we have an industry that, when it's robust, it's clearly active. Certainly, we don't control in Canada the dynamics or the drivers that cause that upswing and spend in our industry. Yeah. The consumers of what we produce and what we generate is mostly outside of Canada.
Yes, you're right.
It's our folks to the south, and if we can get it to open waters, then so be it. But so we don't control those dynamics. However, this industry obviously plays a tremendous role, not just in Alberta, but in the rest of Canada. But I think how we view it, even within our own borders, you smile because you know where I'm going with this. It is, you drive, 5 hours, 10 hours, whatever, in one direction outside of the borders of Alberta or whatever. And it's dramatically, and I mean dramatically, different in how this oil and gas market and industry is perceived. It's a significant employer. It's a significant contributor to our GDP, to our growth, and so on. Now, having said that, the challenges we face is clearly we're in an environment where our environment is important. We can't do things anymore at all cost. We know that there's some of us, I don't want to get into maybe there's a podcast coming up with this, but I know climate change is a concern, and it should be. There's a lot that can be done. I know there's a lot that's being done. And I think if we somehow find, I say we, but this is a collective we beyond Alberta, if we find a balance between what the energy and specifically oil and gas market has to offer, but do that in a responsible way where we address the environmental concerns, I think Canada, and certainly hopefully the rest of the world, but certainly at least within Canada, will realize that we can be a leading country, a leading nation in this very important oil and gas industry. And when I now talk about oil and gas industry, I'm talking even beyond Canada.
Yes, you're right.
So we do have a critical role to play here and move ourselves to the front of the class, if you will, in terms of what that would mean. In the meantime, on the ground, day to day, obviously you, myself, and others, we participate in this industry quite actively. It is one that is it's a gift that keeps on giving to some respect, even in challenging times. But yes, I see that we will still continue to have a lot of dialogue and a lot of great minds coming together to find that balance between doing it, in a responsible way and contribute to our growth, but at the same time making sure that we take care of what the environment is.
Definitely. And one thing, talk about Canada because I have spent more than a decade in Calgary and Edmonton, so I'm aware about this market. One thing I realize we are not talking about positives about that industry a lot, and things are changing a little bit, but it's still a long way to go.
Yes.
As you mentioned, like you go from west to east. I don't know how many people know about this, the contribution of this industry in their day-to-day life, contribution to GDP, contribution to our overall growth of the country. So normally we talked about these things when there is a project. So everybody starts to talk about this thing, and then again we forget about this. But I think it's a constant or consistent effort is needed to talk these things on day-to-day basis, so people knows about this industry. And one thing, as you mentioned, climate change. I fully convinced this climate change cannot be done without this industry. So we have to bring this industry on board,
Absolutely.
in positive way to promote climate change.
Absolutely.
So I fully agree. But on the other side, lots of things are happening in the industry on the technology and all those things, and that is also bringing new opportunities for business and career. And any view on that one, Gary?
Yes, I mean, I am no longer with a company that is that has the kind of capital we used to have to spend on developing technology. But having spent that many years as I did with Siemens and with ABB, it's incumbent upon the industry itself. Let's forget who the major players are. Just talking the industry on a whole. Technology is going to play a pivotal role in well, I would say in most industries, if not all. But let's just specifically on oil and gas. Pivotal role. And it's happening so fast that how this industry adopts or adapts these technologies is going to be critical. And I wouldn't suggest it's just a matter of changing workforce. Everyone says, well, we just need to hire a bunch of young people who, millennials or whatever, and so on. Actually, that's not it. I like to tease my sons. I say, you know what? I'm more millennial than you guys. Because I can figure things out. That be natural for them, but they come to me. So it's not just that. It's a willingness to really appreciate the impact of technology. We go back to and I don't want to be a promoter of these companies, but it's a fact. I think you go back to the ABBs and the Siemens of the world. I think these organizations and organizations such as theirs, I think will play a key role, and are playing a key role in terms of the types of technologies that they can apply, whether it's upstream, downstream, midstream, and whether it's in sequestration, if you want to talk about gases and so on. And it's not a one-way street, and you can't wait for the industry to ask for it. It's got to be a little bit of push and pull. Some things I think need to be, for lack of a better word, pushed into the industries without fear that we're upsetting a specification or they're not going to change and our competitors won't do this and we're going to be different and our prices. Before getting into discussions like that, I think it's incumbent upon us to push those technologies that we know are going to address the things we just finished talking about, the environment. It's going to address sustainability. It's going to address productivity, efficiency, and so on. And then I would say the challenge with organizations is how quickly and how definitively can they adapt these technologies. That's going to be key. If they're too slow to adapt, then you're going to see the impact of that, right? We won't be able to change a narrative. The thing you talk about is that a lot of people don't know things. That comes down to narrative, right? It comes down to who's controlling the narrative.
Yes,
and
right.
The ones that control the narrative right now, they see or don't see, they may not see the quick adoption of technology and the benefits that it's generating and so on. And therefore, there's a certain narrative that goes out, and by the time it gets out, to play catch up to reverse it, it becomes another big thing. So I think new technologies, and I've as I said, I don't want to become a major promoter of them, but you know this as well. There are some key technologies that are out there today that I think we don't have to develop. They're existing.
They're already there, yes.
They're already there. They really are already there. And I would say the challenge is for us as the providers or the facilitators of the technologies to keep actively, aggressively pushing them.
Yes.
And I would say on the other side for the industry to do the same.
Try new things, yes.
No pun intended, but meet our energy. Meet your energy. Do the same. Keep adapting as these technologies are coming online. And I think over time, and it won't necessarily be as gradual. It'll happen in very quick succession. I think we're going to start to see, and we're starting to see some of that already, but we're going to start to see a change in how the technology and technologies are impacting specifically oil and gas, but in general, the heavy industry sector.
Oh, makes sense. And you made a really good point. If technologies are there, so those big companies should continue to push for those technology. But on the other side, the industry has to respond. So I think, again, it goes back to community.
Yes.
There's energy community has to come together on adoption of this technology and also bringing new ideas on the table.
Absolutely.
One thing I have seen, like things have changed a little bit. Like I want to add there, like especially after this, after 2020, when the price went down,
Yes.
it went to negative.
Yes.
I have seen people start to be more open for new ideas,
Yes.
but it's still a long way to go.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, when you have I don't know if this is this is not scientific. This is Gary Reid's, excuse me, this is Gary Reid's anecdote of the situation is, when the pandemic hit in 2020, what is one of the most precious things we all had available to us? Time. Things just slowed right down to a crawl. And when it does, you start to look at things differently. And so looking at new technologies, new ways of doing things became a thing. When we now get back into our normal state, what is the one thing that we say is no longer as available to us? Time.
Time, yes, right.
And so we convince ourselves that we have to keep going this way. And as such, maybe we're not utilizing our time as efficiently or as we should to look closely at some of the things that we could start using in terms of technology, in terms of new processes and new ways of doing things. It's, in a hyperactive market, I would suggest the oil and gas market is hyperactive right now, but in a hyperactive market, sometimes those things are forgotten, right? People are just moving and time is not their friend at that point, or at least they think so. But I'm optimistic for the clients that we have spoken to, that I've spoken to. I think the future looks bright in terms of it will continue to have its challenges. I mean, that's just a par for the course. But I sense that the industry is starting to evolve, and it's on a path that will certainly generate some good outcomes in terms of maybe less of the boom and bust cycles, but some of those things maybe we don't control. But in terms of when we talk about technology, I think technology
is more sustainable, it's a more sustainable journey.
Absolutely.
And that's great. This good to see. You see the same things what we see globally, and I think that's also true for Canada. Like I think we are on the same boat.
Yes.
Coming back to your personal journey. So we talked about before, you're very happy of your achievements, whatever you have acquired during this journey. But if you're given a chance to relive your journey, what changes you might make?
Well, that's a gotcha question, because if you remember, I started off by saying there's absolutely nothing that I have regrets of.
I know, but that's why I said, you already said you don't want to change anything. But I was like, if you are pushed to relive your journey, or if you're given a chance to relive a journey, what changes you might make?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, it's a difficult question to answer, because no one thing has come to mind. Here's what I would tell my 25-year-old self. Sorry, I'm taking your question and I'm repurposing it.
It's okay.
So what I wouldn't necessarily change anything, at least not dramatically. But here's what I would tell my 25-year-old self if I could speak to him today. First thing I would say is, "Oh, I missed your hair." No, but no, I think I would say the formula that you have stumbled upon, stick with it, because I didn't realize that until I was well into my 30s. But I would have said that to my 25-year-old self, and I would have said, "You're part of an ecosystem. And your contribution can be important, can have value, can add value, and have impact. And you need to understand that and keep learning, keep contributing, and just stay the course. There are going to be tough days. And there's going to be some challenges. Calibrate. Take the 5 seconds to go, oh my gosh, and panic, but only make it 5 seconds. And then deep breath and continue. That advice I didn't have when I was 25 years old. I'm not sure I had it when I was 30. It was probably a little bit later that I finally got it and figured it out. Now, would it have changed anything necessarily between 25 and whatever? Maybe it would have changed my demeanor, my stress level, my mental well-being. Maybe those are the only things it would have changed. But the path, the things that I did, how I did them, I'm not sure I would have changed those things dramatically. Only how I felt about them. Because, and I'll give you a quick example. I know we're running out of time here, but a quick example is I was moved from one position to the next quite frequently and in short succession. So I would spend 2 years, maybe 2.5 years in a role, and they would pluck me and move me somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, I just got this thing working. Why did they move me? And they would pluck me and move me somewhere else. And after a while, each place that I was moved to wasn't better than the last. Mm-hmm. In fact, it would drop me in a situation that you look around and you go, oh my gosh, why am I here?
More challenging situation.
But it felt like punishment. Initially, I'm a young guy. It felt almost like punishment. As I said, I panicked for the first 5 minutes, for 5 seconds rather, and then you conscious this and you go about and you do your thing.
Yes.
And it's after a while I realize, oh, okay, it seems that I do well in what I thought was a chaotic situation. It seems like it's something that I kind of figured out how to keep going. I wish I'd known that, 2-3 roles prior, because my acid reflux or whatever it is of stress level would probably not have been as high. But those are the only things that I would have changed if I was able to talk to my 25-year-old self. I can't pinpoint any one thing. There's no manager I would have changed, all the good ones, all the not so good ones. There's no process, no position that I've had, none of the challenges, personal or otherwise, that I've had that I would go, oh, no, I don't, because I've learned from them all. Definitely. Every single one of them.
Either it's good or bad, it brings a new learning for you.
Absolutely. Those were all deposits. I just, yes. I took my withdrawals from them and I learned.
And that's a good way to put it. I know we're running out of time, but I have a few questions before I let you go.
Let me take okay, I'm ready.
So we talk about this thing. You already talked about so many things that we can learn from. But if you have to pinpoint one key takeaway for our listeners in your journey, what will be one key takeaway?
You're right. There are probably a few. I would just say, for me, it worked for me, and I would like to think it could work for others. You go into things with a little bit of a humility. I don't think we all come with certain talents and experiences and vigor and so on. And sometimes, some may have more than the other person, and it. We have big titles, some don't. We have big responsibilities. It's important not to get caught up too much in those things. Go on your journey with a little bit of humility. And I think why that's important is because you don't know what's around the corner. And there's something always around the corner that will just get you and can bring you down and out. But if you already, not that you're expecting a disaster, you're expecting something negative, but if you don't, if you go into something, just kind of get an even keel, and your worth, what you contribute, what you're good at and what you're not good at, which is also important, by the way. I find that it helps to keep you balanced. It puts things into perspective a lot more and keeps you balanced. And, it's not something you're going to learn in an MBA course, a program. It's not something you're going to learn in engineering school. I certainly never did. It doesn't show up on a spreadsheet. It's not in a data source. It's one of those things you just have to be aware of and practice. Yes. And just do. It's that intangible.
That's we always say, treat the person the way you want to be treated.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think we talked about this topic in details with Troy Hobson in one of podcast episodes, and it always goes back to humility, humbleness. That makes a big difference in your journey.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm good to hear.
We have defined 9 key desired behaviors for our employees, and that's one of the 9 is humility. We actually put that in a performance, and we're making this because we want people to be conscious of it.
Definitely.
It's not just about, we want them to be conscious of it.
Definitely. No, thank you so much for highlighting that one. But as I said, we are running out of time, but we will use that time with some rapid fire questions.
Right. I'll keep them short. I'll keep it short.
So this section known as a Know Your Guest rapid fire round.
Sure.
So I'm going to ask you a question. And Gary, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
ready.
Okay. So first question: what's the best leadership advice you have ever received?
Best leadership advice I've ever received is don't make this about you, make this about them. If whether it's a company or your employees or your staff, always make this about them. That's how you inspire people. That's how you bring value as a leader to your customers, to your employees. I remember, I won't call his name, but I remember a manager mentioned that to me. I'm not sure he realized he was giving me leadership advice, but it came out, it stuck with me, and it's one of the things that I've since applied. I try to make it about them and not about me. The me will always come.
Definitely. If you can inspire them, the value they can bring, that will also help you as a leader.
Yes, I mean, if they succeed,
you succeed. Yes, definitely. That's how it works. No, that's great. What's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Oh, so I'm a little bit of a gym rat. I spend a lot of time getting fit. So I'm a fitness person, and I have 3 fitness theories or fundamentals that I live by. It's financial fitness, physical fitness, mental fitness. So any one of those 3 things I'm always working on, and yeah, I like to go to the gym. I like working out. My wife will tell you. I said to her all the time I'm leaving. I said, I'm going to the gym for an hour. She goes, right. You're going to come back 3 hours later. She's probably right.
I'm trying to go in that journey by myself. Whenever I go to gym, it's like you disconnect with everything.
I do. I disconnect. I'm at peace. The brain is still working though. I must admit ideas are still flowing, but it's in a different way. It's not a stressful way.
No, definitely. You're in your own zone.
Exactly.
There's another thing, like as a leader, how do you see how can we attract new talent to this energy industry?
How can we attract? Look, that's multifaceted, right? You're attracting to the organization. Mm-hmm. You're attracting them to a culture. You want to attract them to a way of doing business, and those things are usually intangibles, right? You talk about the culture. Well, someone can't just put it up and show you what the culture is. It's a feeling. I think if companies pay more attention to some of those things as a means to attract the really good people, good talent, I think they'll see an uptick in what that would have on their resource pool. I know I've applied it. I spend a lot of times in interview process talking about our culture more than I'm talking about their compensation, even if that's where someone wants to go, right? That's only one element of it. So for me, attracting to this industry is really comes down to even if the person doesn't know it or says it, it really comes down to that, right? Because once they join, if they thought they joined because the money was the best pay they've ever seen and the best compensation package, once they're in the company, what are they paying attention to? They're paying attention to the culture. How are they treated? How does the company treat employees, treat customers? What does the leadership team look like? How involved are they? Are they examples of what they're trying to get the organization to behave? I think those are important things. They're intangibles, but they're important things.
And definitely. I think culture is very important. And sometimes I have seen companies talk about culture, but they fail in practicing that culture on day-to-day basis.
100%. PowerPoint.
Reality is different.
I said that a few times here, right? You can tell I've seen a few PowerPoints over my lifetime here. The minute someone shows me a PowerPoint with good stuff on it, the next thing I'm thinking is, how do you take that and make it actionable? How do I see that happening? And yes, it's nice to talk about the culture and it's great, but are we living it?
Great. Just another thing before I let you go, how do you inspire the next generation to come and be more open and innovative?
It's a good question. First, I think people need to already come with some of that themselves. We have skill sets, we have experiences and so on. And there needs to be a little bit of either interest or desire or passion. That's the ultimate. That's my scale. You start off by maybe just having an interest in something, then you have a desire in it, but then you really have a passion. Passion is the ultimate. They may not come with the passion, but at least have the interest.
Understood.
And if that's there, then it's incumbent upon us as leaders, as managers, to encourage the natural flow of ideas that have an impact, positive impact, of course, but not free for all. There needs to be something that we're all galvanized around, whether it's specific to a technical solution for a customer, specific to how we want to transform the culture of the organization, specific to how we want to set up a new process, wherever the innovation needs to happen, it should galvanize us to want to create or come up with those ideas and do that. Just because I might have the business card that says president and CEO doesn't mean I naturally have the best ideas. Mm-hmm. In fact, I have a habit of declaring that right up front. Guys, I'm not the experts on this. Who is? And I need ideas. So I think it's about creating that environment where people feel that they're comfortable and that their innovations, their leading innovation, their thought process, their creativity are welcome and would be acted upon. I think Definitely. That's one of the key things I believe that would be helpful.
Now you made a really good point. So we can inspire. What I'm understanding, we can inspire to showing them the big picture, but at the same time to telling them or showing them their ideas are valuable and they can contribute to that big picture.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I think with new generation coming, they want to see that big picture, and they before they join any of the company, any of the industry.
Look, I mean, I have multiple examples of doing this. I walked into a situation and the people are there and they know it's a turnaround. And the first thing I ask them is, what are your thoughts on how to turn this around? Everybody looks at me like, I thought that's why you were here. I'm like, yeah, I'm here to ask you, what do you think? Because you have been living with this issue for some time.
Definitely.
But no one ever asked them. And then once you give them a comfort level that it's okay to actually, the ideas just start coming and you help them to sift through which ones are more appropriate. You give them the resources they need. You challenge them to go up a next level and so on. And before you know, you're solving, all kinds of different problems that people have been living with for the longest while. So I can contribute. I have my own ideas. I have my own creativity. But I think if we create that environment where it happens, I'm sure in your case it has. I mean, we brought you on board when your ABB time because we knew we were smart enough to say, well, wait a minute, I already can think of a couple of things that Anand can solve for us already, just from the dialogue that we were having. And I think you have done well for yourself. You continue to do. I'm super excited for your achievements as well. I know this podcast is supposed to be about me, but I'm trying to make this about you for this last couple of minutes. I think you have done quite well for yourself. And I think it's because one of the things is you have an environment in which you are able to be innovative, be creative, and share your thoughts, right?
Definitely. I think that is very, very important because we all have ideas, but that kind of environment, that culture, like we just talked about the culture, that culture helps you to bring that ideas on the table. And that's how we can inspire many other people around us to bring to the organization. So really good point. Yes. So thank you very much, Gary. We can talk about your journey and all this thing for many hours, but we have a limited time. So thank you so much for taking your time. Really appreciate it.
And the pleasure is all mine. I once again thank you for having me and for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. Is probably one of the first times I've ever spoken for an hour about my journey. But it certainly gives me a perspective. I hope I was able to share some good thoughts and add some value.
Definitely, you have added really great value. So with that, I will sign off for this week. Keep listening, Oil and Gas Breaking Bias Show. Have a great day. Thank you.